it's Jasper, and today we're going to be reading chapter 14 of The Princess and the Goblin. Just kidding, we're reading chapter 15. Pairing with today's reading is my usual cup of magic. Thank you, cup of magic. As always, pour yourself something yummy to drink. Relax, enjoy, and cheers. Chapter 15, Woven and Then Spun. "Come in, Irene," said the silvery voice of her grandmother. The princess opened the door and peeped in, but the room was quite dark, and there was no sound of the spinning wheel. She grew frightened once more, thinking that, although the room was there, the old lady might be a dream after all. Every little girl knows how dreadful it is to find a room empty where she thought somebody was, but Irene had to fancy for a moment that the person she came to find was nowhere at all. She remembered, however, that at night she spun only in the moonlight, and concluded that must be why there was no sweet, bee-like humming. The old lady might be somewhere in the darkness. Before she had time to think another thought, she heard her voice again, saying as before, "Come in, Irene." From the sound, she understood at once that she was not in the room beside her. Perhaps she was in her bedroom. She turned across the passage, feeling her way to the other door. When her hand fell on the lock, again the old lady spoke. "Shut the other door behind you, Irene. I always close the door of my workroom when I go into my chamber." Irene wondered to hear her voice so plainly through the door, having shut the other. She opened it and went in. Oh, what a lovely haven to reach from the darkness and fear through which she had come. The soft light made her feel as if she were going into the heart of the milkiest pearl, while the blue walls and their silver stars for a moment perplexed her with the fancy that they were in reality the sky, which she had left outside a minute ago covered with rain clouds. "I've lighted a fire for you, Irene. You're cold and wet," said her grandmother. Then Irene looked again and saw that she had taken for a huge bouquet of red roses a low stand against the wall was in fact a fire that burned in the shape of the loveliest and reddest roses, glowing gorgeously between the heads and wings of two cherubs of shining silver. And when she came nearer, she found the smell of roses with which the room was filled with came from the fire roses on the hearth. Her grandmother was dressed in the loveliest pale blue velvet, over which her hair, no longer white, but of a rich golden color, streamed like a cataract, here falling in dull gathered heaps, there rushing away in smooth shining falls. And even as she looked, the hair seemed pouring down from her head and vanishing in a golden mist ere it reached the floor. It flowed from under the edge of a circle of shining silver, set with alternated pearls and opals. On her dress was no ornament whatever, neither were there a ring on her head or a necklace or coronet about her neck, but her slippers glimmered with the light of the Milky Way, for they were covered with seed pearls and opals in one mass. Her face was that of a woman of 23. The princess was so bewildered that her astonishment and admiration that she could hardly thank her, and drew nigh with timidity, feeling dirty and uncomfortable. The lady was seated on a low chair by the side of the fire, with hands outstretched to take her, but the princess hung back with a troubled smile. "Why, what's the matter?" asked her grandmother. "You haven't been doing anything wrong. I know that by your face, though it is very miserable. What's the matter, my dear?" And she still held out her arms. "Dear grandmother," said Irene, "I'm not so sure that I haven't done something wrong. I ought to have run up to you at once when the long-legged cat came in the window, instead of running out of the mountain and making myself such a fright. You were taken by surprise, my child, and are not so likely to do it again. It is when people do wrong things willfully that they're more likely to do them again. Come," she said, and still she held out her arms. "But grandmother, you're so beautiful and grand with your crown on, and I'm so dirty with mud and rain. I should quite spoil your beautiful blue dress." With a merry little laugh, the lady sprang from her chair, more lightly far than Irene could, caught the child to her bosom, and kissing the tear-stained face over and over, sat down with her in her lap. "Oh, grandmother, you'll make yourself such a mess," cried Irene, clinging to her. "You darling, do you think I care more for my dress than my little girl? Besides, look here." As she spoke, she set her down, and Irene saw to her dismay that the lovely dress was covered with the mud of her fall on the mountain road. But the lady stooped to the fire and, taking from it by the stalk of her fingers one of the burning roses, passed it once and again and a third time over the front of her dress. And when Irene looked, not a single stain was to be discovered. "There," said her grandmother, "you won't mind coming to me now?" But Irene again hung back, eyeing the flaming rose that the lady held in her hand. "You're not afraid of the rose, are you?" she said, as she was about to throw it on the hearth again. "Oh, don't, please," cried Irene. "Won't you hold it to my frock and my hands and face? And I'm afraid my feet and my knees want it too." "No," answered the grandmother, smiling a little sadly, as she threw the rose from her. "It's too hot for you yet. It would set your frock in a flame. Besides, I don't want to make you clean tonight. I want your nurse and the rest of the people to see you as you are, for you will have to tell them how you ran away for fear of the long-legged cat. I should like to wash you, but they would not believe you then. Do you see the bath behind you?" The princess looked and saw a huge oval tub of silver shining brilliantly in the light of the wonderful lamp. "Go and look at it," said the lady. Irene went and came back very silently, with her eyes shining. "What did you see?" asked her grandmother. "The sky, and the moon, and the stars," she answered. "It looked as if there were no bottom to it." The lady smiled a pleased, satisfied smile, and then was silent for a few moments. And she said, "Any time you want a bath, come to me. I know you have a bath every morning, but sometimes you want one at night too." "Thank you, grandmother. I will indeed," answered Irene, and again she was silent for some moments, thinking. Then she said, "How was it, grandmother, that I saw your beautiful lamp? Not the light of it only, but the great round silver lamp itself hanging alone in the great open air high up. It was your lamp I saw, wasn't it?" "Yes, my child, it was my lamp." "Then how was it? I don't see a window all around." "When I please, I can make the lamp shine through the walls, shine so strong that it melts them away from before the sights and show itself as you saw it. But as I told you, not everybody can see it." "How is it that I can then? I'm not sure, I don't know." "It is a gift born with you, and one day, I hope, everybody will have it." "But how do you make it shine through the walls?" "Ah, that you would not understand if I were to try ever so much to make you. Not yet. Not yet. But," added the lady, rising, "you must sit in my chair while I get you a present I have been preparing for you. I told you my spinning was for you. It's finished now, and I'm going to fetch it. I've been keeping it warm under one of my brooding pigeons." Irene sat down in the low chair, and her grandmother left her, shutting the door behind her. The child sat gazing now at the rose fire, now at the starry walls, now at the silvery light, and great quietness came over her heart. If all the long-legged cats in the world had come rushing helter-skelter at her then, she would not have been afraid for them for a single moment. How this was, however, she could not tell. She only knew there was no fear in her, and everything was so right and safe, it could not get in. Now, I've cut this chapter into 2 parts, as it's a rather long one. So you'll have to forgive me, but you'll have to wait 2 weeks' time to find out what exactly it is that Irene's great-great-great-grandmother has spun for her. However, there are 2 things of interest to talk about in this chapter. The first thing being the return to the subject of fear. The lesson that Irene learns is reinforced by her great-great-grandmother, when she explains it's fairly natural to be guided by fear, but it's something that we need to learn not to do. And the other way we see it return is in the space of the great-great-grandmother's room. The subject of fear is one that's brought up in a way that Irene mentions it cannot come into this space. And that's interesting, I think, for the next point we're going to talk about. And that is the space that Irene's great-great-grandmother takes up. And not just her space, but her activities. There's something mysterious and interesting going on with her great-great-grandmother. We see this when Irene mentions about, how was it that she could see her grandmother's light so far away, and how was it so bright and so big? And her grandmother's response about how she can make it bigger, how she can make it go through the walls. And also that, not everybody sees it, but it's something that Irene is able to see because she's been born with a particular gift of sight that her grandmother hopes one day everybody will have the capacity for. So there's a lot of interesting things going on with this subject of light in contrast to the subject of fear. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this down below. As always, I hope whatever you've been drinking has been good, that the story and conversation have been a fair match. Cheers and cheers. Okay, let's do one more in case it's weird.
Should become a book juggler, perhaps.
No, answered her grandmother, smiling a little sadly. Smiling a little sadly. It's key to remember, this is chapter 15.